Okay, I think we are now live. So hello everyone and welcome.
Hello.
And for those new here, my name is Nicki. I'm an author and editor, and I post videos here on YouTube about writing, editing, reading, and all the other things I love. And today we're here for our monthly genre talk, and our topic today is non-fiction. And I'm joined, of course, by my good friend Alina, so I'll let her say her quick hello.
Hi everyone, my name is Alina. I'm a fiction author, and I have a YouTube channel as well. I also post about books and writing mostly, and other stuff I enjoy. So yeah, check it out. Post stream, obviously, and let's get started.
Yay! Okay, so as we were just sort of mentioning before we went live, it's obviously a fairly broad subject in many ways that we are covering today. So perhaps to start us off, Alina, do you want to just share some of the types of non-fiction that you do enjoy reading?
Yeah, I tend to read enough non-fiction that I was surprised that I actually read that much. But I tend to go to very specialized non-fiction. I read some writing related non-fiction, but it's usually, at least these days, it's usually marketing or very specific business aspects that have to do with writing. I don't read a lot of pure writing fiction because non-fiction, sorry, because hey, I've been in humanities ever since I can remember, starting in high school, all we did was literature and universal literature. And then I studied journalism. So I'm kind of fed up with craft, kind of slightly. I used to read a lot of marketing books and PR books when I was working in that field. But now it's more writing as a business, like I said, a lot of psychology. Because, helps deal with your own issues, also helps better understand your characters, and a lot of art-related stuff like drawing, painting, things like that. So I tend to go for the very specialized stuff, and when it comes to other aspects, I'm interested in, like meditation and its impact, but I always go for a research perspective. And if it's a psychology book, if it's not written by a doctor, like a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist or a psychologist, I usually pass. So if you're interested in all the trendy stuff, I'm not. I'm not much into self-help. I think that's a bit fluff for me. I need more research to back all that claims. So that's the nonfiction I read generally. And I used to read a bit about knitting, but again, very special.
Yes. And I mean, it's interesting. I think we'll come back in a little bit to what you say about the author being quite important as to whether you want to pick up a book, which maybe we'll have a chat about as we move through the topic in a minute. We probably have a bit of overlap with the art type books because I do pick up a lot of now I'm doing crochet as well, so crochet ones, art ones. If I see anything like that on NetGalley, I'll usually put in a request for them. So I just finished 2 this week. One was on the art of visual note taking, and the other was about drawing with pen and ink. So I definitely gravitate towards those. And I guess the other 2 main areas I read are reference works in terms of things. I do a lot of language studies, as you know, so all those dictionaries, grammar books, things like that. As you say, a little bit on the writing, marketing side, but not very heavily. And reference works on music and some of the other things that over the years I've had interest in. I've got a few psychology books lying around, things like that.
Maybe philosophy too, but that sometimes is kind of in between. It depends. It's usually non-fiction, but sometimes it veers into fiction, into
and I guess
fiction a bit.
I guess the only other big main topic for me in non-fiction is I'm a huge history buff, so I do read an awful lot of history non-fiction, whether that's about a particular time period or a particular person or a particular event. I do have quite a few shelves dedicated to that. So
I used to be more into it growing up, but then I kind of got I think the right word is fed up again.
Yeah.
The thing
Too much of a good thing.
The thing about the Romanian school system is that because we're such a small country, we focus a lot on universal stuff. So our history classes always focused heavily on like the global aspects and learning about the history of various regions and continents. So I didn't always feel like I needed to supplement. And now that I've grown up and a long time has passed, I'm kind of interested in it again. Kind of. I'm starting to. So I'm probably like in a couple of years, I'm going to get heavily into history stuff.
That'll be your next lot of books, your next series.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do tend to have within that, I have particular pet periods, if you like. I mean, I tend to gravitate, I do a lot of reading on the sort of Georgian Regency, that 18th century era, and a lot of the events I like the French Revolution, American Revolution, are all in that period. I mean, I picked up a book, I went to a book sale at my local library on Friday, and they had their sort of Society of Friends of the Library had put together a collection of secondhand books for sale. And one of the ones I picked up was called The Twilight of the Habsburgs, so looking at the reign of Franz Joseph. So I picked up that one because I'm quite into Sissy and anything about Elizabeth. So I thought, I'll give that one a try. Yeah. So I do have my pet people. I have an entire shelf just for Robespierre books, my little pet people and pet times that I particularly like. But if something jumps out at me and I see a book that looks interesting, then I'll give it a try.
Yeah, I think I did have like a soft spot for everything ancient Rome because I was one of the Latin geeks in high school. Yeah. I was in the team that went to Latin contests and shit like that. And my favorite ever was Caesar because Caesar. I mean, it's a personal opinion and people can fight me on this. I don't care. I feel like the Bello Gallico was the first public relations book ever written. I mean, you can call it propaganda, but it sounds more like PR to me.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
I've always been fascinated about how Caesar wrote that book because the style is very interesting. It's whenever there was a Roman victory, he'd be very brief and to the point. And whenever they lost the battle, he'd go into this long explanation of why. And I mean, it was a huge difference between we conquered, that's it. Well, it was a cold night, and there was mist, and our scouts were drunk that night, and our inside men lied to us.
It actually, what you're making me think of, Alina, is my husband's got one of those mugs that's like a fishing excuses mug. Like, you know, the rod was too short, and, you know, it makes you think of that.
Exactly like that. And I mean, it's in theory a war book, a history book, and he used that to, you know, gain more power in Rome, which is like, it's a great PR campaign. It's the best PR campaign ever, if you ask me. I mean, in the end, in the very end, he got stabbed to death by everybody. Didn't work out, but you know, midterm to short term, it was a very successful PR campaign. So yeah, I like that. But I would like to get more into history because there's a little hang up I have to admit that, because I was required to remember very precise dates about everything that happened in the entire world, and I never liked that very much, like the parroting aspect of it. And I think that's why I'm a bit hung up. But when you read the history book, you don't have to like nonfiction, not the school book. You don't have to remember all the precise dates. I don't know why I still have that hang up. It was like torture to me because at some point everything was a huge mess, because it wasn't just the year or the month. It was the exact date of the exact month of the exact year. Like, go shoot yourself.
I actually hated history at school, and I didn't take it on once we made our decisions for our GCSE topics that we were taking sort of age 16. I dropped it as soon as it wasn't a compulsory topic. And I hated it because we just ended up doing the same things again, like all throughout primary school and high school. I think I did the Romans 3 times, the Tudors twice, the First World War 3 times, and it was just the same stuff over and over and over again ad nauseum.
I remember that very well.
Yeah, and it's only when I got older and I could like find topics that actually interested me and go off and read for myself that I got really into it.
When I was reading all the ancient Rome stuff, I was super into it. Which is weird because I grew up with books on Greek gods and heroes. So I was supposed to be more into Greece and ancient Greece, but no. Like when I grew up, I was like all about Rome, man. Because all those strong matrons, maybe, I don't know. It just made more sense to me. They were more, they were a bit more devious, like less bloodthirsty, in an overt way, let's say. Because they were bloodthirsty. Let's not play around. But yeah, that was interesting. But school ruins a lot of things. At least here, I feel the system is kind of flawed. There's a lot to just learn by heart and be able to reproduce. And unlike any other school systems I've studied, we had like 13 to 14 subjects per semester, which is a lot compared to 4 or 5 that the Americans have. Like, I would have loved that. I wouldn't have spent my entire day in school learning shit I will never remember, obviously. So yeah, that's the thing. But we don't have that much of a freedom to choose. And we had tests on every subject, but there were certain subjects where we had maybe the equivalent of finals.
Right.
But we had finals every semester, and let's say all the other tests would qualify at midterms, maybe. But the finals were at first 50% of the grade, and I think they decreased it to 25% of the grade later. But it was a big thing. And one of the subjects that we had those special tests for was history. Because humanities. Yay. So I had English, Romanian literature and grammar, history, and for the first 2 years we had like social sciences. So first logic and then economy, I think. It was in the 10th grade. Or no, it was psychology, which I hated in school. Like I couldn't stand it. And then in the final 2 years, they moved that to French.
Right.
So that was better because, maybe that was better for me. But yeah, I did not enjoy history much in school because of this aspect. Like a lot of subjects where you had to just parrot things and you didn't go very deep into the, I don't know, social aspects or the philosophical aspects, or I don't know, just how great of a war general they were. Like, I don't know. And I think in every country, when you get to study history, there's a bit of bias.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Because until I grew up to realize things, I thought the Ottoman army was made up of idiots. Like, seriously, because I was like, oh, but Stephen the Great had like 40 wars that he fought with the Ottoman Empire, and he won most of them. And then when I grew up and I realized those were not wars, those were skirmishes. Those were little battles because the Sultan was tired of his army demanding money, so he sent them to pillage. Because when they wanted to get somewhere, they kind of made their way into Europe, like easily. It's fine. So I had to read like a lot of books later to realize that, oh wait, actually they were great at war. They weren't that stupid. That's how they got to be an empire. There's going to be that bias, but I had to become a teenager to realize that. So yeah, I think that brings us back to the question of the author and their bias, because I think everyone is biased. We have some bias, but some people realize they have it and try to tone it down, and others don't, or they totally embrace it, and it's an opinion piece more than a true nonfiction book, as far as I can tell. So yeah, that kind of puts me off. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely consider the author when I'm buying a book, particularly, perhaps not so much for art and the creative stuff, because you think, someone doesn't necessarily have to have a PhD to be good at something like that and to be able to share it. But certainly on the things like history and the real sort of reference works, then I do care who wrote it and what their background is and if they're qualified to write it, which is perhaps interesting in this genre in particular when we consider self-publishing and indie authors, because there is obviously a lot of material in the non-fiction category going out now. Everything from writing guides and things like that to other topics, and how much do we want to rely on those and on the author's knowledge in terms of giving us advice on those things, perhaps is an interesting point.
Oh, I have a lot to say about that. And I'll try not to tie that into author tube drama at all. But I usually say take everything with a grain of salt. Everything. It doesn't matter. The author can be the most prestigious person in that specific area of study. Take it with a grain of salt. There's a good rule in journalism that you need at least 2 sources. Preferably 3 or more. I think that works for everything in life. Like, don't take something at face value just because you like the person who said things. And for self-publishing, it's easy to follow. I mean, if you know how to do your research, it's easy to put together a very good nonfiction book, because there are certain ways to title it, certain ways to do the covers, certain ways to do the blurb, which is very different from the way you do blurbs for fiction. The person who wrote it is more important, but also what you get out of the book is more important than just, giving a feel of the book as you would do in fiction. So yeah, I think the credentials of the person in question are important. So for me personally, and this comes down to writing, if the person telling me how to make money writing is obviously not making money writing, I'm not going to buy that advice. I don't care whatever services and mentorships and consulting you sell on the side. If you can't make your book sell enough to make money off it, don't try to sell a method to me. That's pretty much the thing. And if you're giving me writing advice, you better pray your book is perfectly written. It might not be the best story, but and I've seen that people giving me advice on how to write healthy romances, and when they're done ranting about it, my question is, so your idea of a healthy romance is blinding jealousy that's usually not explained in any way? Oh, I get it. You can't take your own advice. Great. So yeah, it kind of opens you to scrutiny a lot. This is why I think when you give advice, there should be a sort of a probably added to things, because unless it's something that you've backed up with a lot of research and studies and peer-reviewed studies that are not complete bullshit, you should not pass it off as dogma, let's say. That's why I'm very careful about the nonfiction I read, more so than any fiction.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think particularly with things like writing advice, it is so subjective. And I mean, obviously,
yes,
you and I, we're both putting videos out and we both talk about things that we do. But I think both of us try and make it clear that that's what works for us, but it's not necessarily going to work for everyone. Everyone's got their own way of doing it. So I'm very wary if I see books on writing or on marketing books as well that say, this is absolutely the way that's going to get you $2,000 of sales or anything like that. It's like, well, that worked for that person and that's great, but it might not necessarily work for everyone.
Yeah, and there are strategies that work if you employ them correctly, but then even if you follow the strategy to the letter, then there's that subjective aspect of your actual writing, because you might follow the tropes and all the guidelines and whatever, but you might be dull in your writing and nobody's going to buy that. Which is true. But I mean, like, I give this example a lot. If you want advice on how to make money writing, maybe go with someone like Mark Dawson or Joanna Penn or Chris Fox, who all are quite open about how much money they make. I think Joanna Penn usually refers to the number of digits her annual income has, which is impressive. It's always impressive. And Chris Fox published a video on his income over the last 3 years. Mark Dawson publishes monthly reports with his entire paycheck. I mean, he's really open about that. So that gives them some sort of credibility, because it's like, look, they actually are making money. So if I'm taking their advice on marketing and on planning my book releases and choosing a strategy on how to write, that works. So it's either that or actual studies and surveys or credentials like academics, I don't know. But there has to be something that backs up your claims more than a pretty picture you present of yourself and your life, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's important.
I think we're sort of kind of mentioning just now, we both sort of said we don't try and present either of our personal views in a way this is a be all and end all.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever considered doing any nonfiction writing, or is it something that just doesn't really interest you as an author?
I mean, yes and no. I'm not sure. I had some ideas over the years, and I think it might work to write it, but I'm not at that point yet. Maybe in the future. Maybe. I think, but it would be more of a personal account than a dogmatic take on how to do it.
Sure.
And, you know, with my own brand of sarcasm and humor here and there.
Yeah.
How about you?
I don't particularly think I have. I mean, I think I would always suffer from a bit of imposter syndrome if I tried to write something nonfiction. The only time I have considered it was I did have a few ideas for some little essays when Hannibal was showing on TV, looking at the sort of symbolism, imagery in the show and things like that. And I did have a few ideas for that and vaguely contemplated it, but then that imposter syndrome kind of kicked in and I decided not to go ahead with it.
I'd have a suggestion. I think you should do a video series on that and title it correctly and put it on your YouTube channel. I think that would be very popular. I think whenever you discuss symbolism in certain things like books and movies and TV series, people are really interested in that because it kind of gives them a key to decipher things, or it's like they verify if they got to the same conclusions. So it's fun to watch. Yeah, I definitely do that. So
watch this space, people. It may or may not happen.
Yeah. And for those of you out there who want to write nonfiction, I think the process of writing and publishing nonfiction to me is kind of different from all the fiction processes. First of all, in most cases, even when you try to get an agent and the publisher, you don't have to have a finished book. You have to have a proposal.
Yeah.
And I think when it's through a publisher, who you are and your experiences are a lot more important. they are important when you self-publish, but I don't know, let's take Chris Fox. I think he would have had a lot more trouble trying to traditionally publish his books about self-publishing.
Yeah.
There are some constraints. I mean, a big publisher will not touch your book if it's about telling authors how to do it themselves. But there are a lot of seminars and posts about it on how to write your blurbs. They're generally longer. They're very to the point, as in what you get from the book, what you learn, and who the person teaching you is. And the covers are all kind of in the same style, and it doesn't matter which section of nonfiction it is. It's usually big bold letters, and it's a heavy focus on the title and the author name.
Yes.
And there's a lot of white or off-white backgrounds, and if there is any imagery, is like small and a bit of a symbol. And I definitely recommend checking Joanna Penn's book for this, and Chris Fox's, and Mark Dawson's even. They're all text heavy as far as I can say. Not a lot of people on the covers, which makes perfect sense. And it might seem easier, but I mean, yes and no, because you have to make it look like a nonfiction and then somehow stand out. Which
yeah, and you still want to give some indication of the type of book it is as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you do see a difference between the sort of self-published, not necessarily less rigorous works, but you know what I mean, the slightly more chatty works compared to the stuff that's coming out from the traditional publishers that's really heavy, scholarly kind of text. You do get a slightly different look, I think, between them as well for that.
Yeah, a bit, but yes and no. I mean, it happens if you compare all the self-help that comes from big publishers. No, not a lot of difference. They actually look a bit more childish to me than the self-published, let's say, craft books, or specialty books. I don't know how to call them. But yeah, if it's something that's closer to academia, I think that has a certain feel to it and a certain look and a certain style of writing.
Yes, definitely on the style. And I mean, I'm thinking as well, in particular, I'm looking at my shelves or imagining them because they're in the other room. In terms of language books, I mean, I've got language books that are grammar texts, and it's a very plain cover. It just says, Central Danish Grammar or whatever, and that's about it. But then if you've got like a beginner's guide, like someone who's learning some Danish to go on holiday, there'll be little quirky, cartoony pictures and things like that, depending on what you're getting from the book. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's faster. Recognition comes faster for nonfiction in general than would go for any big fiction genre. Like, I mean, if you think of literary fiction or mystery as a whole genre, the covers are all over the place.
Yes.
You might get a feel for it, but you know, if I just show you a fiction cover with flowers on it and text, you won't know what it is. It can be anything from young adult romance to thriller. So I feel like it's more instantaneous, the recognition for, and the moment you check the blurb on the book, it's immediately obvious when it's nonfiction.
Yes,
I think more so than any other fiction subgenre, let's say. But yeah, it is a really broad category, and we're not going to go in every subgenre because it will take us like 3 years. But yeah, I mean, you get the feel of nonfiction from the text and the author and how the cover is made, and then you have the little imagery like a knitted sweater for a knitting book, maybe a typewriter or something like an apple, and a scale for a health book. there are certain pieces that vary, but yeah, I like that it's kind of a bit more level, like a level playing field than nonfiction, and it should be because it's pretty much the same genre.
Yeah,
but I think
you go.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing with nonfiction as well, particularly traditionally published nonfiction, that you could tell it from a mile away, is that the price point is usually double that of the fiction. $200 textbooks that have barely 300 pages, and you get a novel for $30 or something for the same amount.
It's the same for the self-published ones, though, especially for paperbacks. They're quite expensive.
Okay, them too.
And sometimes even the ebooks are more expensive than a fiction book, but then it's because you pay for the expertise.
Yeah.
I don't think, I mean, I get why it happens. I'm not sure it's always warranted. But yeah. It doesn't happen much on some of the craft books. I've seen like the writing related self-published books, because they're actually quite short.
Yes.
But they are kind of expensive. Like I'm thinking now, the latest one I've read was the Newsletter Ninja. And I just need to check the price because I might be wrong. And that's a 100-page book. I don't think it's longer. It's 120 or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth every penny. No, it's $4.99.
Okay.
So
yeah,
it's kind of like on the higher end of fiction. But they're short and they're pretty much to the point and jam-packed with information. I feel that there's a lot less babbling in self-published books. I feel like nobody has time for that, self-published books. I mean, when it's a traditionally published book and it's a big name, you kind of want to read the rambles too, maybe. I don't know, I think it's a waste of time. But these are kind of to the point and very heavy on examples and how-tos, and not a lot of cuddling happening. It's like, look, this is what you can do. You can do it if you want to. And if you don't want to, probably you should do it. It's really funny. Like, I know it's 10 years I've been there, but do it. You'll thank me later. It's like, yeah, well, there are other ways, but I know very few people who made it big with other ways. And this is like the newsletter discussion in general. I personally know there are exceptions of authors who are very well off and make a lot of money and they don't have a newsletter, but it's maybe one or two. The rest of authors who make a lot of money do have newsletters. So yeah, I like that they treat exceptions as what they are, as in exceptions and not the rule.
Yeah.
Which I feel is not the case for the self-help thing. It's like, well, all those good vibes will definitely make your life better, but don't you get off your ass at all. I feel like we're still under the shadow of Eat, Pray, Love, in a way. And people think if they travel to an exotic country and talk to enlightened people, and by enlightened I don't mean necessarily spiritually, but if they're higher up in their career, and if they have this perfect blissful vacation and then they come home, things will magically change. But then you come home and you still have to do all the work. And maybe it wasn't worth paying that much on an exotic retreat. You could have gotten 3 books that would have given you the same information. But yeah, I feel like nonfiction suffers from this in a way, as does our entire world, that we need to be cuddled and told that we're special. And that we can do anything we set our mind to, which partly bullshit, not gonna lie. I mean, I can set my mind on being a Navy SEAL as much as I want. I'm still a woman, and even if I weren't a woman, I'm still too short.
Yeah, I think you've got to say it's great to encourage, but there's always going to be limits.
Yeah, and if you want to say that sexist, that there are no women in the Navy SEAL, no, it's not. It's because you have to be able to carry your fellow Navy SEAL, and the average woman will never be as strong as the average man. It's just freaking biology. I can want that as much as I want, and even if I were a man and tall enough and whatever, I'm still not American. It's fine. And yes, if you didn't know this about me, that's what I wanted to do when I was younger. I wanted to be in special forces in the US, specifically. Yes, I was an idiot. Yes, I still am. But yeah, I don't like that. That part of nonfiction I do not like, because we never talk that much about dislikes, but that I don't like, when it's all about, oh, you're special and you can do anything you want and the world will give you what you deserve. No, it won't. I have to go get it. I like the more down-to-earth approach, which says, like, this is all the work you have to do, good luck with it. I don't know.
And do you find you approach reading differently with nonfiction? Because I mean, I know I occasionally take nonfiction to bed. If it's
no. I mean, if I have a deadline for reading, I
mean, I do most of my reading in bed. I occasionally do an odd 10 minutes here and there in the afternoon if I've got a bit of time free, but essentially that's my reading time just before I go to sleep. And I will occasionally take nonfiction if it's something like a Peter Ackroyd, who has a very literary flowing style of narration in his nonfiction, so it almost does feel like reading a story. But on the whole, I do tend to read nonfiction during the daytime if I'm going to read it. I don't feel it's a just before I go to sleep kind of read. Sometimes it's a bit too heavy and I just want something relaxing before I go to bed, whereas nonfiction will get my brain going and then I won't be able to get to sleep.
First of all, I rarely highlight and save bits of the fiction I write. I used to. When I was younger, I had notebooks and notebooks of quotes from books that I found interesting and smart and, you know, genius. I don't do that anymore. If I really enjoy a book, I'll reread it. It's fine. Or if I like a paragraph, I read it 3 times and then move on. But with nonfiction, it's different because I usually have one note open on my tablet or on my computer. I do sometimes read nonfiction on my computer. It's the only exception I make. That, and if I have graphic novels from NetGalley that I need to read on the computer.
Yeah, all those craft books I get from NetGalley and the art books, they're usually very picture heavy, and my e-reader does struggle to turn the page if there's a lot of imagery. So I do prefer to have that on the big screen and you can flick through it a lot quicker.
Yeah, but if they send those protected PDFs when I need Adobe editions, whatever it's called, then it's on the computer. But I usually, even on my tablet, I have OneNote open and I take bits of text that I find relevant and copy paste them in OneNote, and then I do go back on nonfiction. Like I do one read through and then another one if it's something that I need to read in depth. I do that for psychology books a lot, and even for writing books, because you get the gist of it in one read and you save some excerpts, but then you want to go back again and, you know, get a lot more information of it, which I don't do with fiction. I rarely ever read the same book twice. It happens once or twice a year. That's it. So yeah, I do approach buying it and reading it differently, and it's mostly during the day. I need my brain to be in working condition.
Yeah.
The only difference, the only exception is when it's for maybe a live stream on AuthorTube and I ran out of time, and then I will spend an entire day and night reading the book before the stream. Which I just did recently for Tamara's stream. Okay. But yeah, no, it's a different approach, I think. Oh, and the other thing I do, if it's an audiobook, I do listen to it while I do other stuff, but it's usually, but that's for literature as well. It's usually when I do things that are not attention heavy. So if I have to walk somewhere or get groceries or stuff like that. And when I'm drawing, I don't know about you, but I listen to a lot of books while I'm drawing. But even then, I tend to stick to fiction.
Yeah, I mean, I've tended to put music on while I'm drawing, but I have been starting to listen to a few podcasts recently. So that's something I haven't done much drawing for a few weeks, but that's something I might trial and perhaps try listening to some of those while I'm drawing. Maybe only the English ones. I kind of have to concentrate on the German and French ones a bit more, but I think that's something I might try.
Those fall into the nonfiction category, podcasts and stuff, and I do listen to those while I'm drawing as well, because they're kind of long and you don't need to stare at the screen to see two people talking. I guess. So I do that too. So podcasts are something that I consume with a bit more attention than I would need for fiction, but still less than an actual nonfiction book, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. But they do take a lot more attention, especially if you're just reading something for the sake of reading it, it's just a general thing. I guess you can take it to bed. But if you're actually trying to learn from it, it kind of makes sense that it needs a lot of focus to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything on your future reading list that's nonfiction and you're excited about?
Well, as I said, I've got that Franz Josef biography, so I will do that one soon. And you see that one's probably not one I'll take to bed. Partly because I've got them secondhand, and I do lean them all over the pillow. So although I do wipe them off, I prefer to, if I'm taking them on the pillow, I prefer them to be like nice, new copies. Yeah. So that's one reason. It's also, I find it difficult to take to bed if they're bigger, heftier sized books as well, just from trying to hold them. So that will probably be an afternoon read where I'll just read a few pages at a time over a series of weeks as I've got time. I'm just having a think. I think that is the only nonfiction one I have waiting at the moment. I did just, as I said, finish a couple of NetGalley ones. And I think everything else on my pile at the moment is fiction. But I'm sure a few more will crop up along the way over the next couple of weeks and months. So I do tend to read a reasonable amount of it. So I do read some every month. Just depends what I see around.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's worth pointing out too, that it usually takes more to read a non-fiction book than it would take for a fiction read. Unless you're on a deadline, then all bets are off. But yeah, I do feel like I can read one non-fiction book throughout a month and finish 10 fiction ones during the same time. That's true. I'm actually rereading Chris Fox's Right to Market because we're going to have a talk about it. And I enjoyed it the first time I read it. I feel like it helps you a lot. Even if you don't go through that approach, like when you're writing, you can either write first and market later, or think of the marketing first and then write the book. I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I think it makes it easier from a marketing standpoint to know what you're doing, because otherwise, if you're like me, and maybe you a bit, because you kind of merge different genres in a book too, when you're done with it, you have to think a bit about how it's going to be marketed and presented. I'm in the middle of several art books, and again, I think the reason why those are not a light read is because typically you do a lot of drawing while you read them.
Yeah, you try things out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the middle of a figure drawing book, which I've been working on for months now, but that's because whenever I read the 3 pages, I have to do like half an hour to an hour of drawing. So
yeah,
that's another thing. And I have one on drawing manga, which I can't wait, because hey, visual novels. Those are in my future, and I would like to do character design. Hi.
Yeah.
Ada says hi, by the way.
Hello, Aries.
So yeah, I do have a bit, and I have to say this was a goal of mine at the beginning of the year, to read more nonfiction. And I am, like, I have, and I still am. Oh, go away. Sorry, puppy dog guys are sometimes distracting. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's about it. I feel it's something that grows on you. I don't know about you, but I feel like the more nonfiction you read, good nonfiction, the more you want to read it.
Yeah, definitely. It's not something I would have gravitated towards, even in my teens. Really, it's really been from sort of my 20s onwards that I've started to read it more.
Yeah, no, I think the only bit I gravitated towards as a teen was philosophy a bit. But that was it. Yeah, but you're right. It's something you do a lot more later on, unless it's very specific.
Yeah, I mean, I think music was probably my exception. I think in my teens I did read music nonfiction. A lot of the books on my shelves down there are from when I was doing all my flute and piano and singing lessons, and I had all the music theory books, music history, and all that sort of thing. So I did have those, but it was very specific stuff.
Yeah, and I read a lot of stuff by certain literary critics, which is nonfiction, let's face it. I read a lot of stuff like that for Romanian literature and Latin as well.
Yeah, and obviously at uni, all the literary theory kind of stuff. And when I wanted to be an actress, which was just before I went to uni, I did audition for some drama schools. And I was obviously reading my Stanislavski method and various things like that at the time as well.
Yeah, but I feel like growing up, I did it because I had to. Well, now I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still learning, and I still enjoy learning new things. But now it's more like gaining insight, I guess.
I guess one section we haven't really covered that probably we have both done some reading in is travel.
Oh, yes.
Things like city guides and travel guides and all that sort of thing.
Yes, but I do not really read those in book format.
Right.
But it's still nonfiction because I used to manage a travel blog. I wrote and read quite a bit of travel blog posts, and I mean, it's a different format because it's more visual from all the photos people post, but it is a travel guide. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't mention that. I read a lot of those. I do have guides from places I visited.
Yes.
I collected them at first, but then I realized there was no point. Especially if they were translations into English. I feel some of them were crappy.
Right.
Like not the best grammar ever. But now, I mean, then I kept the city maps, like the tourist maps for the main tourist areas of the city, because I kind of like to just go around and walk. I know I did a lot of that in Amsterdam, for example. I never had the plan or took any directions. I just had the map, and that was it. I went with it, which was fun. But yeah, I mean, I did read a lot of that, but not in book form.
I've got like such a ton. I mean, I've got in my library, I've got one shelf that's what I think of as my travel guide, so the city guides, books like that. But then, as you mentioned, whenever you go and visit places, and obviously around England, I've been to a lot of stately homes, castles, and the same overseas, if we've been anywhere overseas. And I do still have, I brought them all from England with me, got them all shipped to Australia, all the guides to all those castles, all those places, and as you say, all the maps and things. And I've got something like 3 boxes, like plastic boxes full of them, just all piled up in the wardrobe there. But occasionally, I mean, they're not something I go back and look at every 2 minutes. But if I'm writing a book and I want to take the characters to one of those places, it is handy to be able to have a quick reference and remember where things were and bits like that.
Yeah, to be honest, if it's a place I travel to, I usually browse through my photos a lot. I do that a lot. I know I did that with Prague when my characters from Bad Blood were in Prague at some point.
Yeah.
I was going through my photos and my posts about that. But I usually know who's been there and who wrote my favorite guides. I mean, I made no secret out of this, but I kind of loosely based my Travel and Spice main character on a real person I knew. They have a similar background as in the fact that they travel and that's their main source of income. And I did get inspiration for a bit of the romantic issues from this friend of mine, because he always said it's really hard to have a serious relationship when you're traveling because people don't get that. But that was where it ended. But the lifestyle, the hassle of it, that was real life. And I did live in that world for a while. I never was a full-time traveler. It was a part-time thing for me, but I did travel a lot more than I do now. Let's not mention the past year and a half. Yeah, it's an interesting subject, and I think it's the one subject where the personal opinions and the personal aspect matters more than in any other nonfiction category. Definitely. I mean, it's the style of writing and the style of traveling and the personality you look at when you pick someone who writes certain guides or a type of guide, or like Lonely Planet guides. And I had friends who wrote for Lonely Planet while I was in the travel community. Well, I'm still there, but I'm not as active. Yeah, I think that was worth pointing out. It's very different. It's very opinionated when it comes to travel.
Yeah, and my requirements from travel guides have definitely changed over time. I mean, when I started traveling a lot, first with my family, then on my own, I liked the really standard guides, I guess you'd say, that the stuff that this is the big main things that you have to go and see, this is where they are, this is how you get there. But over time, and I've actually written a blog post about this. It won't be out till next year because that's how far ahead I'm planning my blog posts. But talking about the idea of cultural tourism, and I was definitely a cultural tourist. I wanted to go there, I wanted to see the big famous places, and I wanted to get a feel for the culture as well, try the local foods, that sort of thing. But I definitely went to those big tick the box tourist attractions. And over time, I've kind of gone off that a little bit. I mean, I'm still a little bit torn because you kind of want to see them. It's like, say, you want to go to London and you want to see Windsor Castle. And of course, Windsor Castle is very interesting. There's some brilliant stuff to do there. But as you go to Windsor Castle, you end up in the big, huge queue of tourists and you get streamed around the place in this almost like conveyor belt manner. And it kind of makes me think these days, is that really how I want to spend my holiday? And I do now look for guides and information that's more on perhaps some of the smaller places that the big tour buses don't go to. So you're getting a feel for that culture, but you're missing some of the big spots, but you're still getting a better experience of the country and its people because you're not just on that tourist conveyor belt.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think I'm kind of the same way. I do like the big important landmarks. I don't think I would go somewhere and not see them. Although I've been in London and haven't seen many of the landmarks because, to be fair, I only spent an afternoon there. And what we did was hang out in Hyde Park, which was my favorite bit, especially because there were no squirrels in sight, like none. No. And we've been there for like 2 hours, no squirrels. And I blame my friend because she had a strange encounter with a squirrel. She was smoking at the time and she was on the bench smoking, and a squirrel came to her, looked at her, pulled her hair, and then ran away. And I was like, it's your fault because the squirrels know they did something bad and they're staying away from you. This kind of shit only happens to you. The squirrels. And then we went on a sort of a boat tour on Thames. And I've seen some of the parts, and then we stopped and went around the Parliament building and whatever, that area, and the huge Ferris wheel,
Yep.
We had a walk around there, and that was our time because I only had a few hours in London. But I think because I was traveling with her, even when we went to Cambridge, we did take a tour on those paddle boats. But it was more like, oh, this is a cool restaurant. Let's eat here. Let's walk around. Let's do things that are more at a leisurely pace. And I haven't done a lot of the classic tourist thing when you go and your schedule is jam-packed with things and you have to see them all. And yeah, I haven't done that in a while. I like to just take my time and go to smaller places and enjoy them.
Yeah, I mean, I do still try and see the big things, but I think I try and plan it really carefully. I like to get there absolutely first thing before the crowds build up, do those, and then go off and do something else. I mean, in Paris, I've been to the Louvre, I've seen it once, that's fine. If I go back, though, I do like to go to the Musée Carnavalet, which is the little Paris city museum. It's a free museum, unlike the Louvre, and there's people there, but it's not jam-packed like the Louvre is. So places like that. And I mean, I've got a book of, I think it's called 1001 Different Things to Do in London or something like that. Because obviously I know London quite well, and Corey and I have been back a few times. So with him, I've done all the big things that he needed to go and see. But when we go back, we do try and find something new to do. And that book's been quite handy. So there's little places that you just wouldn't necessarily come across. So those little quirky things.
I like the off the beaten path sort of guides. Those are wonderful. And I think I like the solo guides as well. I think people don't think about travel as something you do on your own, but I think it's important to travel on your own at least once.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of travel I did on my own, Paris, Prague. When I came here, obviously, I was on my own to begin with till I met hubby. You know, sometimes I catch up with pen pals along the way, but I did do a lot of solo travel. So yeah, I think definitely sometimes it's good to know places where you've got a good welcome as a solo traveler, and some of those tips for like if you are on your own. Obviously, some countries it's a little bit more difficult than others to go around on your own for safety and things like that.
Safety is paramount all the time, but I think it's important, and this comes from someone who didn't understand the concept of traveling on your own. Why do it? It's something you do with family or friends because it's fun. I remember the first time I was exposed to it was actually on a writing retreat when we had to spend some hours doing a certain assignment in one of the small islands around Sardinia. And I first loaded it, then I was like, it's okay, but then not something I want to do again. And then later on, I spent like a month on the road, and I was driving on my own for a lot of that. I did stop at friends' places and stayed with them for a few days, but all the traveling in between and a lot of the sightseeing I did on my own, which was pretty freaking awesome. It was the first time I did it, and then I did it again later, and it's kind of fantastic.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a way to self-discover.
Yeah, when I ended up coming here, that was a big backpacking trip, and I did America first. I spent a few weeks there and then came over here. And I was, in America, I had a few pen pals that I knew that I met up with along the way. One of them I stayed with, two of them I stayed with in Chicago and San Francisco. The rest of the time I was in youth hostels. Yeah. And I think it was definitely a good experience for me because I was fairly naive, and so it was a good learning curve about getting out there and having to fend for myself. And it was also good because I do tend to be a bit shy at times, and it did kind of make me have to go out and talk to the people in my room and get to know people. And I'm still in touch with, not in a huge way, but vaguely in touch with one or two of them, even like these 12, 13 years later. So I did like that. I mean, I actually quite like traveling on my own. It just depends on my mood. Sometimes I think it's nice to have someone there to share it with and be able to talk about what you're seeing. But at the same time, because I am a bit independent as well, and I know what I want to do, and my parents and my husband hate me because I'm a really quick reader. So if there's a big information board, I'll have skimmed that and got everything I want from it within about a minute. Everyone else is still on the first paragraph, and I'm ready to move on to the next bit. And they're like, no, we're still reading. And I'm like, come on, let's get moving. Usually I've got a schedule because I'm a bit of, as you know, I'm a bit of a planner. And I do have, by 1 o'clock we'll be here, by 2 o'clock we'll be here. And I get very irate if we don't keep to my schedule. So if I'm on my own, at least I can just do what I want and I don't have to worry about upsetting everyone because I'm making them go along too fast and they haven't read everything yet.
Yeah, I think the best way is to travel with someone that you can do things together with, and then you can have time on your own. And I think Mike and I would work great on that because he's like, it doesn't overexert himself. Not because he doesn't want to, but he's got a limited dose of energy. And I can go do stuff on my own, and I don't think any of us would be upset, which is kind of cool. And it's also, I mean, it's hard to find people that you mesh well in terms of travel because travel styles are very different. I'm not big into making sure all my meals are at what do you call it, like the full service thing where you have all the meals there.
A la carte. A
la carte. Yeah, no, it's the all-inclusive style of lodging. I don't like that. I don't like to have to be in a certain place 3 times a day. I like having breakfast included. That I like because
I'd agree.
I wake up hungry when I'm on vacation. Like I have to have breakfast first thing, where here I dilly-dally for like 2-3 hours or 4 until I remember, breakfast. I like a big breakfast, and then I just want to look around and eat wherever I want. Maybe I just want a sandwich one day or a donut or whatever.
That's what puts me off cruises, because I absolutely love boats. I love being on the water. Yeah. So from that point of view, a cruise appeals to me. But what doesn't appeal to me is, that regimented, and when you look at my in-laws have been on a cruise. They've been on 2. They just came back from one to New Zealand. And you listen to what they're saying, and they really didn't get to see much, because by the time they got into port and got off the ship, they then have a very limited time. They've got to be back or the ship will leave without them. And they sort of almost, in some ways, they were afraid to go off too far and do anything, because they were really paranoid about getting back to the ship. And so you kind of feel, I don't think I'd like that. I'd like to be able to look in advance, plan what I want to see, allow enough time to see everything I want to see.
If it's a cruise ship that's heavy on the port stuff, like stay there for a day or 2, then maybe.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it feels like, we're just partying here for 9 days on this ship with people maybe you don't particularly like. No. But I do like the writing retreat style of travel a lot, although I've only been on one proper writing retreat, because you're with people with the same interests. You get your writing done, and then you go wander off and discover things. I think that's awesome. I think I'd like to organize a few of those in the future, but it's a lot of work and a lot of responsibility. So I feel like I'm not there yet, but I would like to do that. I mean, I like what Derek Murphy does with the 1 month castle stay. Yeah. Which, by the way, if you're looking for an actual writing retreat with a huge workshop and a lot of actually successful people, I recommend checking Derek Murphy's crazy project. Yeah, he had one for a month in a castle in Europe this year, and I was like, if I had the funds, I would have gone. So
So we've drifted off topic a bit from non-fiction books to our favorite holidays, but that's fine.
It's fine. Enjoy it. Go travel. Have fun.
I think we have kind of pretty much covered it. Do you have any sort of closing thoughts on non-fiction you want to share?
Yes, it grows on you, and you should try it. Pretty much. That's what happened to me. You should try some non-fiction. And I say start with topics that really interest you, and then expand. I think that's the best way. Don't read it just because you have to. Just find something that you're passionate about or you want to know more about, and start there. And pick people whose style you're into. If it bores you to tears, maybe skip that book.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely right. I think I'd agree with all of that. You have to start with something that is actually going to really make you want to find out more. And picking the right author, so you don't launch yourself into something that's really academic orientated. if you're completely new to it, start with something a little bit lighter. So, you know, in the history, I'd be going like the Peter Ackroyd, which is a sort of storytelling style of writing history, and rather than going in for that really heavily footnotes on half of every page kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, you could skip the footnotes if you want, but...
Oh, no, see, if there's a note, I have to read it in case it's interesting. I'm terrible. That is why I
have to convince.
I do prefer my nonfiction in print form if I can, because I am someone who does like to flick back and forth to the notes, and that is a bit harder in the ebook sometimes.
Yeah, no, I mean, if I really have to, I would read the notes. I like to skip them. It's like, whatever. Footnotes, some of them are interesting, I guess, but if it's an explanation that I'm not particularly interested in, or I don't want that amount of detail, I'm gonna just skip and get back to the bulk of it. I'm horrible, I know, and especially if I notice they're like reference notes, like it's a quote and it's just reference to the book.
Yeah.
I just skip those. I just don't care. I skip those. There's usually a list of books they referenced at the end of the book, and I go through that and decide if I want to read anything of it. I'm terrible. Don't be like me.
So, well, I guess we'll kind of gradually wrap things up for today then. And we had decided
the next one. Yeah,
that's right. So we're on Alina's channel next time, which we're looking at the 7th of April, Sunday the 7th of April. And we're back for one of our read-alongs. So do you want to tell us what we're reading, Alina?
We're reading His Majesty's Dragon, the first book of the Temporary series by Naomi Novik. I mean, we've both read it already. Because we planned this far ahead. And
you still got time. You still got time to do so if you want to read along and talk about it with us.
You should definitely read it and join us for the conversation on the book. We had some nice comments on the first one, which I was really happy about, because it was a sort of a heavier book.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a lighter chat this time.
And by the way, I'd like to say that the more time passes, the more I think it's a great book.
Good.
I'm still kind of mad with it for certain things. Shut up, Aris. Sorry for the background singing. Someone wants attention. And I've been awake for too long without giving him any attention. So we'll be there. And then 2 months from now, we'll be back on Nicki's channel with another genre to dissect and discuss, and probably stray off topic, because I mean, we had a nice run of several streams where we were perfectly on topic, and then you mentioned travel.
And we were off. We were off.
I love it so much, so it's hard not to start getting into travel stories and fast.
And is there anything that you want to tell us about, Alina, that you've got coming out or coming up in the next few weeks?
Well, funny you should ask. I decided to scrap my entire publishing schedule. I have no dates. I'm just writing, and it's great. But there will be at least 3 more Just Don't books released in the near future, starting sometime this month, later on. I am working on a mystery series right now, and I'm reading a lot of mysteries because that's research. It's not me procrastinating, thank you. It's perfectly normal to read 20 mysteries in a month when you read 38 books. Nothing got done in February, if it wasn't obvious. Head over to alina-popescu.com/free reads to try a few of my stories. You can sign up to any of my newsletters, either of my newsletters. Wait, it's still either of my newsletters because it's just 2 of them. And try out a free book. And that's about it. Check out my channel. Maybe subscribe.
Perfect. And I have just one to announce. Obviously, I mentioned last time, Blood is Forever is on the way. We're looking at end of May, I think, still for that one, although there has been a bit of a shake-up in the publishing schedule. We are going to be editing it this month, so I will know by April a bit more definite on the date. In the meantime, though, I have decided to release a free novel, which I'm going to be publishing in serial form. So it's going to come out one chapter every fortnight between now and the end of September, and chapter 1 is up. And I'd say it's a historical action romance principally, but there's a little dash of cogpunk and a little dash of paranormal in a way as well in there. So this is an MF1 under my Nicki J. Markus pen name. So no LGBT content this time, but if you want to check it out, I am going to put the little linky to it there for you. And it is free, and I'll be putting on my Twitter and Instagram little updates as I put the new chapters up, which will be once a fortnight on the weekend. So do check it out if you're interested, and you'll be able to read the entire thing for free.
Yay!
Yay! So
that sounds interesting, and Nicki has an excerpt she read on her channel, and I suggest you go listen to that. If you need any further encouragement to read it.
So I think we will wind up there, but we'll look forward to seeing you again on Alina's channel next time. So do go follow her so you get all the notices about that. So bye for now, everyone.
See you soon. Bye.